Now, if you haven't watched or listened to the earlier chapters or earlier discussions what we had, I would suggest you go back and you can listen. But logotherapy in clinical settings. So this is kind of we discussed about logotherapy before. Okay. Now logos, the meaning is a Greek word. It says logos. The meaning of it is itself meaning. So that means logos. Translation from Greek to English would be meaning. So that means meaning therapy. Okay, logotherapy is meaning therapy. So that means finding the meaning and how therapeutically you can treat yourself or somebody else. The mental trauma just by treating them with the concept of logotherapy. Okay. Now, Frank starts, he discusses this process of psychotherapy and the role of therapist in this chapter, which is titled Logotherapy in a Clinical Setting. Okay. And what he says is he emphasizes the importance of addressing the patient's search for meaning. So, how important it is when the patient or with somebody, if you and I are the patient, so that means if you are experiencing that kind of a mental trauma or mentally disturbed and you do not know, probably you lack the excitement in your life, he says that that probably logotherapy may help. And that is when you connect with the meaning. So that means you identify, help someone or help yourself to identify the meaning of your life. So, according to Frank, the therapist role, that means whoever is treating a patient, is to guide that patient in discovering their own meanings and values rather than imposing any external values and interpretations. Okay, so that means if I want to impose a certain thing on somebody else, that's not gonna work. Okay, so that means if are you, so the first question is on logotherapy, are you living your own values, your own beliefs, your own dreams and desires, or you are living somebody else's dreams, somebody else's desires? So it maybe sometimes it comes as your parents or your colleagues or your siblings, your or societal pressure. So that means in that way you are living someone else's life rather than your own life, and that is when you are not mentally fulfilled. Okay, so that's what he talks about, identifying the meaning. Okay, not your own meaning rather than any meaning imposed on you, which by society saying that this is something which you need to have the meaning, okay, for. So, according to Frank, the therapist role, he says about discovering the meaning, and but discovery part, he introduces the concept or the idea of neurogenic neuroses, okay, which are psychological issues stemming from lack of meaning in life. Whatever that word is, or the words neurogenic neurosis. But unlike traditional neurosis, that might arise from unresolved conflicts, he talks about neurogenic neurosis emerge when an individual search for meaning is thwarted or when they struggle to find purpose. So, Frank also explores the concept of existential frustration, which occurs when individuals are unable to fulfill their desire for meaning. Now, he explains that existential frustration can lead to various psychological symptoms and even contributes to physical illness. As you know, physical and mental things are all connected. So, logotherapy in this context aims to alleviate this frustration by helping individuals to discover or uncover their own source of meaning and better understand their unique life's purposes. So, Frank stresses that logotherapy does not seem to eliminate suffering. That's just to be very clear, as suffering is an inevitable part of life. So that means worrying, suffering things, which you may not work out the way you want it. Okay, they are inevitable. Instead, what Frank stresses on is, through this book he teaches the individual how to find meanings in their suffering. So that means um, when you go through those sufferings, so when you go through the situations in life, how do you find out the meaning? And when you find out that meaning, so that means the sufferings are not suffering, but these sufferings are the stepping stone for your success. Okay, so it teaches the individuals how to find meaning in their suffering and transform it into something purposeful. He also points out that logotherapy can be applicable to various situations, including dealing with past trauma, overcoming phobias, and enhancing personal growth. So, in summary, talks about this chapter talks about the practical aspects of logotherapy as a therapeutic approach. It emphasizes the importance of addressing the search for meaning in a psychotherapy, outlines the challenge individuals face when meaning is lacking, and presents techniques for therapists to guide their patients in discovering their own sources of meaning and purposes. Okay, so now the few additional points we wanted to discuss. um, so logotherapy identifies three additional existential needs that are essential for human well-being: the need for meaning, the need for relatedness, and the need for self-transcendence. So, paradoxical intention, he talks about a concept of paradoxical intention is a technique used to help people to overcome anxiety and other negative emotions. Okay. So, what it does, what is this therapy is all about? So, it involves deliberately doing the thing that you are afraid of. For example, if you are afraid of public speaking, you might deliberately sign up to give a speech in front of a large group of people. Okay, so that's one of the techniques. Another technique is dereflection. Dereflection is a technique used to help people to stop focusing on their problems. It involves deliberately shifting your attention away from your problems and towards something else. Okay, so that's a very practical thing. So that means the mind, our mind, the way it works, it delves on the things repeatedly. You think about, for example, somebody told something to you, so if you and you didn't feel good about it, okay, you feel bad, you feel offended, you feel angry about it. So what do you do then? The more number of times, so what the human mind works is it keeps just rewinding it, and then it plays it again and again, that same thing. And as you know, our minds, the basic concept of our mind is, if you vividly imagine something, okay, then it becomes, the mind cannot differentiate what is a vividly imagined scenario or picture as opposed to something which is the real one. So that means, let's take for example, they did a study of someone just imagining that is this a basketball player. He just imagined repeatedly, multiple situations, and multiple sort of times he was just playing it in his mind, that is able to uh, so that was a basketball, he was a basketball player, so he was just was imagining that he was able to put the score the goals, or put the ball in the basket multiple times without him physically doing it. Okay, and then there was someone else who tried physically doing that, they did not find the result of this test was that uh, that is kind of the results for in both the scenarios were kind of pretty much same. One just vividly imagining things and another was physically doing it. But the way our mind works, so mind gathers this information, okay, what you see physically, and then it creates kind of mental images. So if you are creating that mental image on its own, without even physically experiencing that, so what happens there is your mind cannot differentiate, because the way things are perceived by your mind is through mental imagery. When you see something physical, that is that's a reflection of it, that is an image of it, goes in your mind or in your brain. So when you imagine something vividly, okay, you are doing this exactly the same thing. The only thing is physically it's not there, but again the mental images are getting passed into your mind. Okay, so that's very very important for you to understand that de-reflection is a technique used to help people stop focusing on their problem. Okay, because if you keep thinking about the problem again and again, you will feel equal pain, misery every time you listen or you watch that same scenario or the same pictures you if you bring it back. Okay, so, if you are feeling anxious, you might try to focus on your breathing or on sensation in your body. Okay, it talks about that as completely you are focusing on attention not on the problem but on some completely different. Okay, now the example may be breathing, maybe focusing your attention on a different sensation, or you may be thinking about something positive, lying on the beach. So you are what you are doing is you're manipulating your mind. You are not going by what your mind wants to see in its mental kind of eye. You are the one who is feeding that information into your mind. Okay, so that means you have full control on the emotions, what it would generate. Okay. So logotherapy in short is a powerful tool that can help people find meaning in their lives and to cope with suffering. If you are struggling with a problem, I encourage you to speak to a therapist who is trained on logotherapy. Okay, so in that way